I knew from a young age in my teenage years that I just didn't want to repeat my childhood. Like the moment because I always felt out of control. I always felt like somebody else was controlling my life. The parental figures that I was, just the world I came into, the cards I was dealt. I wasn't the one controlling those cards in my younger years. Their decisions were negatively impacting me and things like that, and I didn't like that. So I realized I needed to take control and I needed to set the stage for myself.
Join me, Jeremy Swick, on Into the Unknown, a podcast that delves into the personal journeys, stories, and experiences of individuals across diverse professions. As a historian by trade, I firmly believe that our personal histories shape our present and offer valuable insights into our paths ahead. With that being said, let's get into it. On this episode of Into the Unknown, I am joined with a very special guest, Chris Matz. How are you doing today, Chris?
Doing pretty good, man. Great to be on here. Thanks for having me.
I really look forward to getting into our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. Let's jump on in.
One of the ways I like to kick off the show is talk about the importance of networking. How are we connected?
So I believe Olivia connected us, and she thought that you might be a good person to know. So I'm here to have a conversation, see where it goes, man.
I really love that, Chris. It's one of those things. I think it's so important. We talked a little bit before the show, kind of just sharing that story and how important it is to hear everyone's story. Chris, I want to know a little bit more about you, that comic book issue number one, that origin story. Who's Chris?
I always think I have a hard time uh, making a long story short. I like to give extra details sometimes because I'm like an external processor. I like to just think out loud a little bit. So yeah, I'm born and raised in small town, kind of small chunk of the country, northern Michigan. Probably one of the most least desired places to live in the winter months, but in the summertime, it's a beautiful area on the beaches of Lake Michigan, etc. But yeah, growing up, I didn't grow up with any type of financial means or money. I came from a very poor and a lot of adversity in my upbringing. My mom, didn't really graduate high school, like got pregnant young and just worked as cleaning houses, waiting tables, that sort of thing. Dad wasn't always really in the picture. Dad was a pizza delivery driver. That's kind of what he did his whole life, So like, didn't come from any type of financial means, and um, a lot of the adversity in my upbringing, I associated with that. I associated with, having to move around all the time and, having a lot of instability and things like that. With the fact that we didn't have money, and money would have solved that, that problem, etc. And I knew from a young age in my teenage years that I just didn't want to repeat my childhood. Like the moment because I always felt out of control. I always felt like somebody else was controlling my life. The parental figures that I was, just the world I came into, the cards I was dealt. I wasn't the one controlling those cards in my younger years. Their decisions were negatively impacting me and things like that, and I didn't like that. So I realized I needed to take control and I needed to set the stage for myself. And so yeah, lots of adversity. I was diagnosed with childhood leukemia at the age of 7, and beat that. And always felt like, hey, maybe I'm here for a reason. Maybe I'm here for something. And long story short, when I was in high school, I started getting into personal development. Um, Funny enough, I got recruited into a multi-level marketing company, uh, pushing like vitamin energy drinks and stuff like that. And that was a weird exposure into this world of, you know, personal development with the Tony Robbins and the Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and Robert Kiyosaki and a lot of those types of guys. And so even though I was, in a really poor kind of mindset, and nobody was kind of specifically reaching into my life as a mentor and guiding me there, I I just believe that, and I'll get into it in a minute, but I developed a spiritual connection along the way. But I just believe that, yeah, I was being guided into this, so I started going all in with the personal development stuff, and I realized that I was an entrepreneur because I never referred to myself as that, but I was that kid who would take the wagon full of water to the festival and sell it to everybody else when they come into the I'm from Traverse City, Michigan. They come to the cherry festival for, the summer and stuff. I go down there and sell water, turn a 30, pack of water into $30 I bought for $3. And, I'd be the kid in school selling gum and candy out of my backpack. And, instead of putting my books in there, it was just filled with gum, like those types of things. I didn't really fully connect those dots that, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. That's what I am. And then when I read the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, it really made sense to me and just hit a chord. And so, I think from that point, I was just trying to figure out what that meant. What business to start? How do I start one? All those things. I'm graduating high school and I didn't have a career path. I, just started painting houses and going, hey, maybe I'll try to make some money doing stuff like this, pressure washing, whatever. And along the way, I ended up through personal development finding spirituality and asking a lot of questions and trying to figure out, is there a God? Is there a what was the meaning of life? We were kind of that, you know, situation where my mom might have us go to church on Christmas or something like that. That was like the most exposure I was given. So I ended up going all in with spirituality. I became a Christian, devoted some time to doing door to door ministries, doing Bible studies with students on the campus of Michigan State, and just going all out with ministry for a few years. Felt like I've found my calling, but then I kind of hit a point where I realized the world is getting more and more expensive by the year, and this thing called the dollar and the system behind it is not really rigged in your favor. So you got to kind of make a lot of this thing if you want to survive in this world, which I don't love. I think that, you know, I kind of like have this love hate relationship with money. It's like a great tool, but you have to have it, and it kind of sucks, right? So I just realized then that, like, if like money is only really an issue and a problem to the degree in which you don't have it, right? It's like I hate money so much that I want to have so much of it that it doesn't actually matter to me, right? And then so that pushed me to, yeah, starting around 2018. A little bit before that, kind of all over the place along the way, I was doing some digital marketing thing at every step of the way, whether it was trying to figure out how to generate leads on Instagram when it first came out, 2012, 13, did a bunch of stuff with bots and landing pages and yada, yada. But just kind of little side projects, and got into, learning about Gary Vee, saw him at a convention at one point, and I ended up starting a digital marketing agency around 2018. I think that was kind of the era of like the Ty Lopez teaching the social media marketing agency concept to a lot of people. And so I kind of got, brought into that wave. And I really found a vehicle of I can use skills to pay the bills, and I can work for myself full time. So at first it was like went out, bought a course, dropped like 5 grand on a course, and didn't have that money, maxed out a credit card. And from there I went and just started doing Uber, trying to pay that course off and getting some clients along the way, listening to the course in the car while I'm driving people around, and yeah, built up some income, and made some money a little bit. Hit your first $10,000 a month as an entrepreneur, you feel good, and it's grown a lot past that and different things. I'm, different phase of my life now in my entrepreneurial journey, but it's kind of the origin, I would say, if you're going to think about the base that was laid to put me to where I am right now. That's kind of that origin part of it. So that's the very long short answer to that question.
Well, Chris, you touched on a lot of important points. I think one of the things you mentioned is growing up with not a lot of money and understanding that you didn't have a lot of money. And I think, as you kind of mentioned throughout your childhood, finding ways to make that extra income, make that extra money. And I think a lot of times, as you mentioned, especially in kind of the era we grew up in, you weren't always called an entrepreneur per se, but you were that kid who sold gum or sold water or sold really, anything to make a couple extra dollars. I think it's one of those things that you touched on that I think a lot of times we don't really know what we call ourselves, especially during that time period. If I'm being honest, it's one of those things where I think you start to develop maybe those names afterwards.
Sure. Yeah, I'm still figuring out what does it mean to be an entrepreneur, man. There's a lot of different cuts to that cloth, so it's a journey for sure. It's
You
fun.
also you also touched on another important point. I think that idea of personal and professional development. Of course, sometimes it is buying that course. Maybe it's the course you couldn't afford. But I think there is something to be said about learning more, not just about yourself, but also those avenues and those vehicles, as you mentioned, to generate that extra income. Because I think a lot of people weren't created for that 9 to 5 lifestyle. And I realize there's nothing wrong with that. I've been in the corporate type world as well, and there's of course benefits and different experiences that go along with that, but I think there's something to that idea of not having a boss, if you will. But it's one of those things that I think a lot of times personal and professional development can help unlock those. Or I think in some cases people, and I've had people on the show that realized they weren't entrepreneurs and maybe
Hmm.
there was a different path for them. But I think it's important to explore those areas.
Absolutely. Yeah, not everybody's an entrepreneur. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I wish, man, I wish my brain didn't work the way that it was. Maybe it would be better off if I was a little bit more content in life. I'm always restless and pushing and grinding, So there's benefits. The grass might always look greener on one side of the fence, but be true to your gifts and talents and skills that God has given you, and try to figure out how to use them to the max. And that's where you're going to find the most fulfillment in life, anyways. So money isn't everything. It's just a necessity in today's world. Have to have it. Time freedom is a beautiful thing, but I think there's this facade that, "Ooh, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to have time freedom." The reality is, it's very difficult to do that at a scalable, sustainable level for a long time. And just really, what I found is the key to being very, very successful as an entrepreneur. If you really want to break out of that, kind of lower territory and six figures and get into that 8 figure range, you gotta just be all in on one thing, be the best, be all obsessed about it, relentless, and be a little bit crazy about that one obsession, to be so focused. And that means you're probably going to work way more and harder than anybody else or you ever would at a job. So I think is again, there's many cuts to that cloth. What do you want? What do you want? Do you want to be, how much money do you want to make? What's your goals? All that stuff. Part of it too is probably the game. Like sometimes in some of the businesses and things I've done, like I didn't enjoy that business. Money might have been good. I didn't enjoy it. I've closed businesses down that I was just like, it wasn't for me. Didn't align. Didn't love it. And there's things that are just like, maybe it doesn't pay as much, but dude, this is challenging and fun. I love it. So that's just such a relative thing, I think.
Chris, I couldn't agree more. You touched on two really important things. One, the idea that you do need money to survive. I am very much in the camp of money. I wish motivated me maybe more than it does. But at the same time, I also understanding that you need money to, you know, pay your debts, to live, to just exist on the world. But it is one of those things where when you can find those things you're passionate about, it makes it worth it so much more. And I tell people, I remember I was in grad school working on my master's thesis, and one of our biggest things our professor told us is you're going to have to love this subject. You're going to have to love whatever you're working on for a really long time. Grad school is about 2 years, but if you want to pursue a PhD, and likely it's going to be that subject, you're going to deal with this in the next 8 to 10 years.
Right.
In my case, there's only two. I only got my master's, but it was one of those things. I ended up writing it on college football stadiums in the 1920s, which is a very niche thing. It actually ended up helping me get positioned at the College Football Hall of Fame and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And so it really paid off in that sense. It was one of those topics and subjects I was obsessed about. I couldn't get enough. And I think I parlayed that once I went more of the entrepreneurial route, is finding an area that you're obsessed with, or finding an area that you really do get a lot of passion and joy. And I think a lot of times that money creates things where if you maybe don't enjoy a specific part of the business, you can find a way to get your time back and not have to deal with some of those things that you don't enjoy, but also having the ability and skills to kind of understand it, so you kind of know what you're paying for, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yep. It's all relative, right? Whatever you want to do, and what you can get excited and passionate about. It's not a one size fits all. And I think that that's something like, you know, everybody's algorithm and social media is different. I try to stay away from as much as I can, but I get suckered into it from time to time. You get caught in the scroll or something, and man, like I can imagine like people get bombarded with this look at what people post online and their other lives of these entrepreneurs who are driving these, exotic cars and living in these crazy places, and life is appearing as if it's perfect and all these things. And then people feel like that's what they need too, right? And they don't have a quality life if they don't have those things. And maybe some people do. Maybe some people, that's something that they need. Some, it might not be for everyone. I think that we just kind of fall into this, everything should kind of look the same for everyone type of mindset. And yeah, it's true. Like you can experience your own definition of success wherever you're at and whatever that might look like, for sure.
So, Chris, on everyone's journey, especially a journey like yours, you make a decision really not knowing the outcome. Can you give me a time where you made a decision and just went for it?
That is like a really interesting question because I can't pinpoint. I feel like just throwing it at me like that. I don't know if I can just pinpoint one. It's like every day of my life, man. I'm challenging myself in my current business and other points of my life. Just I think it's anytime you're challenging yourself, you're just gonna be held at the mercy of you know I don't know what I'm doing. But then you kind of get this confidence where you're like, yeah, but I've figured out things that I don't know what I'm doing before, so I could probably figure this out too. And I think that I'm probably at a crossroads all the time. And in that, if you're talking about that type of crossroad where it's like, I got a decision to make and I don't know the outcome and I don't know what to do right now. You just kind of have to push, 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 and just make massive action constantly, and let that massive action, the constant failures that come with that massive action, just kind of push you and pull you into the right direction of what will actually work as a solution and guide you. And you just kind of get you know beat around through so many different failures and attempts that eventually you just look back and you're like, oh, I actually did make progress. I'm ahead of where I was. So yeah, that's kind of how I view that concept. I lean on God a lot. I think that at the end of the day, I'm a human being. I'm grateful and blessed to literally just live in a free country. I didn't choose to be born into this world. I could have been born anywhere with anybody at any time. I have I'm just blessed and to live in a country where I can go and build something without all these crazy restrictions and laws. And so I'm just going to try to make the most of that.
Chris, I appreciate that answer. I think one of the things you mentioned, that repetition of success and failure, I always compare it to like a roller coaster. You're going up and you feel it in the pit of your stomach. You feel like, oh, this might not work out. And I think a lot of times you remind yourself, you're like, well, it's worked out before or it hasn't. And I now know how I can overcome that, or how I can pivot or maneuver. And I think it's one of those things that's really is exciting about the entrepreneurial journey is seeing what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, problem solving. Some people like my brain. I just like it. I like to solve problems, and sometimes I get so stressed about the problems I'm solving, and I wish I wasn't solving that problem. And then I get into a season where I don't have like those types of problems to solve, and I get bored. And then I would go and kind of wish I had some more difficult problems to solve. So it's this love hate roller coaster ride of life of just kind of just it just goes how it goes, and just gotta ride and make the best of it at each step.
Chris, title of the podcast, Into the Unknown. What are you working on now? What do you have going on right now?
Yeah, so I'm working on a marketing company. Kind of see it's blurred out. It's on my wall back there, but marketing ninjas. So I built a marketing company, started it back in 2018, sold that company in 2023, and on that first venture, I also started a bunch of side ventures, and that's where I think I really got my teeth cut as an entrepreneur. And I learned a lot about, if I'm going to build a marketing company in the future, here's all the things I would probably do differently than the one I'm building right now. So after I sold that company, I started gearing up to build this one. And yeah, it's the way that I've wanted to build, and just doing it the right way, not cutting corners, going all in, focused on one thing. And we primarily are helping restoration contractors around the U.S. right now. Got about 160 restoration companies we work with. We are expanding into other home service folks as well, roofing and other kind of adjacent industries. So that's what we're doing and who we're helping, and bringing a lot of innovation to the way we're doing things. A lot of marketing companies is just like, yeah, we do social media, or we do Google ads, or we do SEO or website, or this or that. We're just kind of doing something really unique where we help folks get referral partners. If you got somebody who can refer you jobs, we help you build your referral network through marketing initiatives in your area. Set up that network so they can start referring jobs to you. And yeah, it seems to be it's a really, the thing about it is it's a really difficult service to provide, right? Because it's not like, I can just go and hire somebody in the Philippines to set up some ads on Google, and you pay me $1,000 a month and I pay that dude 300 and pocket the seven, right? This is like very bespoke, a lot of human involvement, where we're actually having live humans reach out and build this network for you. And it's a really complex, problem to solve, and challenging service to offer. But it gets really the best results compared to any other marketing channel you can compare it with, because land a referral partner, that person can feed you for a long time. Your ROI on that one referral partner can be almost infinite. So we really believe in what we're building and offering here, and very excited for the future, because we've got a lot of cool stuff that we're working on that's on a roadmap to help innovate and improve. And yeah, it's exciting. So yeah,
Chris, if people want to learn more about your company, where can they find you?
you can go to marketingninjas.io, and that's our website.
Well, Chris, I want to say thank you again for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciated hearing a little bit more about your story.
Absolutely, man.
That was another fun episode of Into the Unknown. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if it provides you any value or entertainment, I would love if you shared it with others, liked, subscribed, and really just help the podcast grow. Again, tell a friend, tell a foe, just anyone who might enjoy hearing some stories of people's own journeys and what got them to where they are today. Till next time.